Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 814, written by Hawkeye 8601. Darkness at Taco Bell. Me and my girlfriend are getting Taco Bell after a long day of work. Keep in mind, we work pretty late at a bar/restaurant, so the time was around 10:30, maybe 11 p.m. We had ironically been watching Glitch in the Matrix stories for a few minutes before pulling into the drive-thru. After waiting in line for a minute, as we were listening to music, everything goes dark. I mean everything. The streetlights, the Taco Bell signs, this is where we get weird. The cars around us lights went off as well. Everything went dark in the most literal sense possible. My girlfriend looks at me and asks if I saw what she saw, and for a second we had to take in what just happened. A power outage would make sense if it had been just the building lights or the street lights, but I can't explain how in that split second the lights in every car went off as well. It makes no sense. Everything seemed pretty normal after that, and we ate our food and continued back to our house. On the way back, listening to music, we played a little game thing we do where I asked her to pick a number 1 through 10, and I skipped to the song That Many Skips Away. I asked her to pick a number, and she picked 5. I skipped 5 songs ahead, and Vice City by XXX starts playing. As the song is playing, I notice that the background music sounds reversed, so I asked my girlfriend to look up the reverse version on YouTube and play it. As we are listening, the reverse song says, "When the lights go out, better run, girl." This freaked us both out, and I still don't know what to make of it. Case notes for file 814, Darkness at Taco Bell. So yeah, we're back to being clean-shaven. I don't know if I like this more or not. Let me know what you think. When it's colder, I like to keep it longer, but just felt more proper. So often in these perceived events where the light goes out and there's no audio playing, it's as if you become deaf for just like a split second, maybe 1 second, as reported. Often people assume that this has some relation to the sun itself, but I don't think so. I think any light, any fluctuations within the EM spectrum are affected, and including the vibrations in the air, which are just another form of wave compressing throughout the atmosphere. Then we interpret that as sound through our ears and brain. But yeah, it all seems to be dampened. I guess a dampening field would be the best approximation. As far as light goes and electronics, an EM pulse bomb, which can be accompanied by nuclear weapons, can cause that. But obviously there was no bomb going off in the area, so I'm not sure. There are just EM pulse generators, but again, it should last much longer than a couple seconds. Those would actually fry the components in the car and just leave them as bricks that would have to be pushed. There is also a possibility of cosmic particles. So charged particles from the sun can impact electronics, especially GPS satellites in space, or just satellites in general. The ISS has to deal with this all the time. There is an EM field around the planet that protects us, usually, although sometimes they filter in. And then you get the aurora borealis, although sometimes there are still particles that manage to pierce the atmosphere and the EM field, and those can actually affect electronics. Whenever you get a random blue screen of death on your computer, it's often attributed to just cosmic particles crashing in and damaging the component or just disrupting the flow, causing a computational error, and then you have to restart. Pretty rare these days. There's a lot of redundancy in the code and hardware. Outside of those things, it might just be more evidence of simulation instability. Seems to be rather common these days, or at least reported more often. Maybe it's always been this way and just more people are realizing that, yeah, we should talk about this stuff. I would certainly hope that's the case and the universe isn't becoming more unstable. That would be unfortunate. Case file number 815, written by yoadriaaaan. Video evidence of a presentation I never gave. I give a lot of presentations at work. There was one particular presentation me and my team were working on, and after drafting slides and working on it, we decided it wasn't working. We scrapped it, and we had never turned it in. The draft slides have remained on my laptop for a good 2 months. Every now and again over that time, I've seen that draft and thought about deleting it, but always thought maybe we'd go back to it one day, and it would be useful to keep it. Yesterday I had a meeting, and I was prepared with a different presentation. My colleague introduced us, and he then said, "And now, yoadriaaaan will give you your presentation, which is this draft we scrapped and never completed." Keeping professional and thankfully having kept the slides, I was able to make it up on the spot, but it was a bit of a mess. After the meeting, I asked him what happened, to which he was equally confused as to why I had messed this up and told me we had done that presentation several times. We had a pretty friendly disagreement about it. I was convinced he had introduced the wrong thing and he thought I had just messed up, and I would have agreed to disagree if it wasn't for him showing me a video on our company's Instagram page of me giving this very presentation before. I specifically remember the conversation of us scrapping it, of seeing the file on my laptop several times over the last 2 months and having that thought process of whether or not I should delete it. It even features a video I've never watched. When I've seen that in my drafts, I've thought to myself, I should probably watch that. Which I now have watched, whilst giving the presentation for the first time, desperately using the 3 minutes it took to play it to try and think about what the hell I was going to say next. I'm convinced that I never gave this presentation, in spite of the fact that there is a video of me giving this presentation. Case notes for file 815. Video evidence of a presentation I never gave. Right, so I have to be honest. Even though I know about quantum immortality, multiverse theory, and all that stuff, to have direct video evidence of doing something that I know I never did, well, it would make you completely freak out and question your own memory. It's sort of like the Mandela effect taken on Kaioken steroids. You know, all the SARMs in the world can really make you feel just how crazy that would make anyone feel. You seem to be handling it pretty well, so props to you on that. So, could it be a memory block? You do have the files, although there was one that you didn't remember playing, including the presentation. It could be a crossover, obviously that's always possible. You're in a different universe and now these things happen where you don't remember them because you weren't really the one that did it. Just a copy of you that you're now inhabiting. But I have to say though, memory control, memory distortions, there's a reason it's often used in dystopian sci-fi because it's so unnerving. If we can't trust ourselves and our own recollections of what happened in the past, it's almost like we can't trust that we are who we are. We lose ourselves if we don't have our memories. It's very disturbing. Bonus file, written by Clean Actuary 4547. Tragedy, death, and whistling. About 2 nights ago, I was sitting with my girlfriend and her sister in their backyard, inhaling plant matter in my car. We smoke often, so just a few is really nothing. Around 8 p.m., her sister went inside. We live in New York, the Bronx to be exact, so the sun was setting around 7 p.m. and completely dark by 8 p.m. So now it was just me and my girl chilling. I'm rolling up and we're talking, getting rowdy and then laughing, nothing out of the ordinary. In her backyard, there's parking for about 4 cars, but they were all out and I was parked closest to her neighbor's fence on the right, facing the road. I can see all the way down the driveway. Directly behind me is a mesh fence that you can clearly see through. Through that fence is a church. Over on my right, in her neighbor's yard, is a garden that you can see in. I'm saying all this to let you know I have a great view of her entire yard from the front to the back, and the sides too. So I could have seen anyone or anything coming easily. Well, while we are talking, out of nowhere, we both hear a whistling sound, about 2 seconds long, loud and clear. Immediately freaked us both out so much that she ended up from the passenger seat onto my lap, but I was able to keep my composure and calm her down and get her to go back to her seat. This took about 3 minutes, and we were talking about it, trying to find a logical explanation for what just happened. While we were doing this and basically calling anything paranormal not real and dismissing it as a cat or a squirrel or even my car, it happened again directly in my girlfriend's ear, loud and clear. I even heard it coming from her ear area. It was as if it was ensuring we could hear the whistling, whatever it was. My radio was off, as was the AC, as it was a little chilly and windows closed tight, but it was as if the whistle was right next to her in the car. We stayed for another 20 minutes and decided she was too uncomfortable to stay there. She says weird things always happen in her house, but I never really take it seriously, and I let her know that I don't believe in stuff like that. This time though, I experienced it myself, and I looked and tried to think of everything to explain it, but I can't. I'm more scientific than religious, so I just want an explanation, but this is a tough one. My girlfriend, her sister, and brother did put me on to some things that I have experienced growing up in the house, and I found it really interesting. When they were little, they used to play hide and seek, and my girlfriend, 22, would go hide in her sister's closet. Sometimes when she would go in there, she would see a pale little girl hiding with her, but she didn't get any bad vibes, so she never bothered with her. I questioned this like I question everything, and she said she was probably just too young to think much of it. When they were kids, my girlfriend's brother said he once saw a little girl running down the hallway, but thought it was one of the sister's friends. But when he couldn't find her at the end of the hall, he asked his sister, and they both confirmed they didn't have anyone over. About a month ago, around 11 p.m., my girlfriend was sitting in her living room and heard someone in the kitchen taking stuff out to make tea. But when she went to go see who it was, the stuff was just left on the stove as if someone left in a hurry. In the morning, she asked everyone, and nobody had been making tea. A few years ago, her mom's brother ended his life, and they didn't find out until a few months after because some of the family issues made them not very close to him, but his wife had some personal issues. I don't know the full details. At one point, he used to live there with them, and when my girl's parents got divorced, he took care of them like he was their own. Before they bought the house when she was 2, a doctor lived there, and the doctor had a daughter that was fine at one point, and after an accident, she became paralyzed. You can see this throughout, with the door frames being bigger to accommodate wheelchairs and a ramp outside. That girl ended up dying in the house some years after her injury. Case notes for the bonus file: tragedy, death, and whistling. So I've personally heard a noise that no one else was around, it was just me, but it was a noise, just a cell phone ringtone. It wasn't my cell phone, and there was nothing else around that was causing it that I could find. Just a noise that didn't belong and didn't fit. It's like it was being played somewhere else and transposed into my area. Sort of like this whistling sound. Would you say kinda came from the car right by your girlfriend's ear? Could it have been some sort of entity that was capable of whistling? Maybe. I mean, do these spirits or echoes also breathe air? Are they able to affect the atmosphere with their vocal cords or their tongue? Maybe. If they're able to move objects, it's probably not the default state, but maybe they're able to eventually train themselves to learn how to do that. I suppose it does make for a good mind warping. Just something to do to prank people. If you think about it, if spirits are there and there's even a shred of sentience, you know, they're just somewhat aware of being that they're alive, or alive, that they exist, they would probably get bored. So, I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that a lot of them would just turn to pranks. What else are they going to do? Watch the same people, eat the same food, and go to the same places, although, you know, eventually that would get boring, so you gotta have some fun.